I was just in a funk and I couldn't quite figure out why. I mean, it turned out like at the end of the day, I looked back and I was actually really productive. I got a lot of things done, a lot of things crossed off my list. But I just never really felt like I was solid at any one time of the day. I felt like I was, low energy. I was sluggish, and I just couldn't get it. And so I talked to Jamie, and I'm like, just so you know, I'm not at my best today. Interesting. On Tuesday, I was feeling better, and so I told her, like, I'm doing good today. She's like, oh, thank God. But it's an interesting thing because, in my world, I'm usually the emotional rock. So when the kids are having a hard time, I'm the one to like, hey, let's talk about it. Let's work through it. Let's process through it, and let's figure out what's really under there, and rebuild from there. But when I'm in that place where I need that emotional rock, it's disconcerting for the folks around me. And so we had great conversations, all the way through, and I threw myself into as many situations as I could where I could just feel normal. But yeah, it was interesting this week, kind of processing through that. We're still trying to sell the house, so that's an interesting thing. It's weird. So our realtor has listed the house on Zillow, and Zillow has all these really interesting like insights and statistics that you can look at as you're selling your home. And it says how many people have viewed your home compared to other similar listings in your area, how many people have saved your home. And our realtor's like, with the statistics we have, like we've got like 6 times more views on our house than the average listing in our area. We've got, 3 times more saves than the average listing. She's like, with this kind of data, we should have had an offer already. We should have been like already working towards closing. Had tons and tons of showings. We've had 3 showings, and it's like it's crickets because people aren't going out of their house. People aren't leaving. There's uncertainty with the economy, and that's a surprising emotional roller coaster for us. Just trying to figure out how do we navigate this? How do we keep hoping that folks come into our home and look around without touch conversations. You can do phone calls, you can do email check-ins. You can do, there's all sorts of different tools that you can use to continue to connect with people. And I think that as we've taught leadership, people keep asking us, what are the 3 universal tools that I need to be a fantastic leader? And unfortunately, that's not possible. As many different types of people you lead or you work with, there are that many different types of ways to engage with people because everyone likes it a little bit differently. And taking the time to explore how every one person enjoys connecting or communicating, and then playing to that whenever possible. So you've got, let's say, an introvert on the team who really does not like Zoom calls or gets stressed out by people talking over each other on a large Zoom call, which is a real thing. People actually feel emotional stress, physical stress when that happens. And so pay attention to that. Maybe large 25 person Zoom calls where someone turns into a potato is not the right method for everybody. And so think about that. There are wonderful solutions, and we've seen some of our clients, they find that they're doing too many Zoom calls because Zoom is the thing we're supposed to do. And now they're over Zooming. And so people's calendars are now filled up with Zoom calls. And it's like, that's not the way we would normally work to get things done. And so anyway, thinking about just the uniqueness of the people we're working with and how people may want to engage.
I also like, from a capacity standpoint, if we're working in environments where we're physically distanced, we're not seeing people for kind of those walk by the desk check-ins, or, Zoom calls are hard because people do talk over each other and then your little video thing lights up different and it can get really chaotic. is at some point, whether it's weekly or, every other week, whatever it is, the cadence that works for your team, to get on some sort of visual representation, a whiteboard in the background, something you email out to everybody that they can print or, have separately, that has all of the work that's being done, and then asking the team, is this realistic? Because it's a lot. I think there's a tendency to make assumptions about capacity for work right now, individually or for the team as a whole, and to kind of then lean back on that wisdom of the group and say, is this still realistic?
Yeah.
Is this still highest priority? So I think constantly gut checking what you're working on and what's the scope of it with the group, asking for that input, I think is, depending on your work environment, can be really important. Because when it comes to resilience, if you want your team to continue to perform well, then we need to be looking at understanding and managing the workloads accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. And similar to that, one thing that we've done before with groups, when we work in person on a workshop or whatnot, is the idea of reciprocity and asking for help. And that's something that's very difficult for folks, especially when they're good at their jobs and they start to move up the ranks. The belief is that expectation for you to be able to do your job by yourself and have all the skills and tools necessary to do so, it goes up. But the reality is there are things that people can help us with. In fact, when you jump up to a high enough level, what you find is that the most successful folks have the ability to accumulate people with disparate skills. And so, they talk about the best presidents are people that surround themselves with people who are smarter than they are. And so when you talk about whiteboarding and sharing what we're doing and asking about realistic, that's a wonderful opportunity to check in and say, is there anything that I can help you with today? Is there anything that is taking longer than you would like it to take? And this is, Nicole and I, we work a lot on things where, if it's a technology thing, that's not your realm. I mean, I can't tell you how many texts I have that says that you're basically an 80-year-old woman, trying to.
When it comes to technology.
When it comes to technology, yeah. But then, like, there are certain things about process and strategy and organization that would take me a lot longer to accomplish than it would Nicole, and follow up and those sorts of things. And so, finding where there's opportunities to ask for help, it speeds things up and kind of lifts some of that burden.
Yeah. So one of my other favorite strategies that can be really significant for individuals and for teams when we talk about resilience is this idea of reframing. And how we reframe what we're experiencing, and could we look at this differently? So one of the hallmarks of being resilient is this idea of adjustability, or elasticity is one of the words I like to use, where, how much can you go with the flow? How could you be pulled this way? How could you pull that way? And then still, manage to maintain productivity and progress, in the face of something challenging. And reframing is a really powerful tool, fairly simple, but it's, you come up against something that's a challenge, and instead of, oh my gosh, this is terrible, oh, this is awful, oh, it sucks, allowing yourself the moment or two to feel that is fine, but don't stay there. And then moving quickly into, how else could I look at this? And that might be, this is a great opportunity for me to develop my technological skill a little bit without needing to text Eric for help. It could be looking at, so skill development is one way of reframing. So I can choose to look at this instead of something that's just really terrible. Maybe it is terrible, but it is also an opportunity to practice empathy. It's an opportunity to work in a different way that we have before, or change a process that's been bothersome for so long, or has been kind of a hindrance on what we're doing. Now we have an opportunity to change that. So there's some skill development. Gamification is also a good way to reframe it. So you reframe a challenging situation or some adversity into, okay, well then I'm going to see if I can make it 3 minutes without complaining about this today. I'm going to see if I can make it an hour without, crabbing at my coworker about something else. I'm going to see, and turning it into, again, an opportunity just simply to view it differently
It's like
than, oh,
putting
this
this
is
thing up on the
awful.
wall. Like it's been 3 days since our last accident, right?
Yeah, exactly. The safety day count.
Yeah.
So that reframing is really important. Personally, it will change how you approach it. As a team, again, that's an opportunity to build resilience, is how does the team view that together? And we've been doing some team coaching and some virtual trainings on resilience, as well as some other topics right now for organizations. And one of the hot buttons in conversation is, holy cow, all of a sudden my leader is showing up differently.
Mm.
And, or that eccentric or difficult characteristic they had is now more problematic than it ever was before, because it's very visible.
Right.
And so how can the team reframe that as a different way to move through? Like, hey, we're learning more about our boss. This is great insight for us to have so that we can meet her needs differently.
Yeah.
Instead of just, whoa, all of a sudden she's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, maybe she was crazy the whole time, but now we're seeing it in a different way. you know, um, this the concept of resilience is one of those things that it plays out for me uh, in interesting ways. So resilience is the ability to persevere in the face of adversity, to keep going. And we're now dealing with a lot of adversity. I like to dive deep right into the brain, and how our brain works and how our brain deals with things. And I was doing a lot of research on, and it was like deep, very deep brain science. They were talking about measuring the length of time of synapses in resilient people versus non-resilient people in certain stressful situations. And it was some of the most difficult research I've read so far. So I'm not going to dive too deep into it. But the interesting thing is they found is that the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that, originally brain scientists said it handles the fear response, and analyzes for threats. But what they found in more recent studies is that the amygdala also, in addition to processing memories of emotional threats, but also processes memories of reward. And so what that part of the brain, the amygdala's major role is quickly looking at a situation and assigning it, is this going to be a good thing or going to be a bad thing? And so that has really interesting implications of how we process the world. And so they found that people who are more resilient than others, they actually have fewer synapses or brain connections from the amygdala out to other parts of the brain. And so the way that we develop synapses is through experiences. So the more that we have an experience, the more synapses we have in those parts of the brain. And so the less likely our brain is to process something as a threat or stressful over time, the more resilient we can be. Now, the reason I talk about this, and sorry for the deep brain science there, the reason I talk about this is that synapses are always being built and they're fading away throughout our entire life. And that just happens as we're experiencing things, deciding things, thinking about things. And honestly, that's how habits are formed, right? Because these synapses get stronger and stronger and stronger. Well, if we can practice, some of the strategies that you're talking about, Nicole, and learn to process our adversity in different ways, well, we can actually start to develop this skill of resilience. It's not just something that is inborn in us, that some of us are resilient, some of us are not resilient. No, actually, if we can start to practice some of these tools and do them constantly, we can actually develop the skill of resilience, and it's something that can be taught.
That's really exciting. I think that's encouraging too for teams to think about, and people, just to say, hey, I don't feel like I'm navigating this well. I keep hearing that in
Mm,
conversations, personally and professionally. I just don't feel like I'm navigating this well.
yeah.
And I keep saying, you will learn to.
Mm,
Like, you're learning how to navigate it right now. So this experience, like you're saying, the formation of those synapses, again, and this is reframing, right?
mm,
This is a great time
absolutely.
to learn how to navigate
Mhm.
really difficult situations. And that's what we're doing. And to be able to put it in that framework then makes it okay to talk about it.
Yeah.
There's a couple of teams that I've advised to add an item to their weekly agenda: team capacity check, or how are we doing as a team?
Hmm.
And for it to be just an open forum place to say, man, it seemed like on Wednesday, everyone was really frustrated. What was going on? Oh, well, we had these three things crop up, or there was this issue, and to use that to build insight. And I'm so excited to see, coming out of this whole thing, the potential positive long-term effects of
Right.
this. If we
Right.
can start to practice this instead of just fuming through the next couple of months, weeks, or however long this lasts, and then coming out of it and going right back into how we used to behave. Because I think there's a lot of really powerful practices and opportunities right now, um, to get better and to do better now that we know differently. We've seen what it could look like, or we've created space for some of these conversations.
Yeah, it's really interesting you talk about, some of these changes. So I am notorious for not communicating with family. Like that is unfortunately something that I have always needed to work on. When I was in high school, I went on a 1 month exchange program to Colima, Mexico, and I had only taken one semester of Spanish. Like I know donde está el baño. Like that's what I knew going into this. Don't worry, your host family will know English. It's okay. And so I get there and they spoke no English. So we learned a lot. There's a lot of lo siento, más despacio. Like I'm sorry, please slow down. And so that entire month, like while I was on this exchange program in a different country, I didn't call my mom at all, like at all. I wrote her a letter. I did write her a letter, but like it's just something that I've always struggled with, and because of this situation, I've actually felt this really wonderful compulsion to communicate with my family, and I've had more phone calls in the last 2 weeks with my family members than I have in all of 2020, or maybe even the last 6 months. And we're doing like large family Zoom calls where we're getting a bunch of us together and just how are we doing, because my family's scattered across the country. And the funny thing is, as I kind of think back on it, that technology has been there. Like we could have always done a conference call, we could have always done a Zoom call. Like that's the technology always been there, but for this specific reason, we've kind of reframed this situation. Said, oh, well, now we can check in with folks in a different way and see the inside of each other's houses in a different way. Um, and so what I'm looking to do at this point, from now until, as you said, the next couple of months, right, is I'm looking to build this muscle. Like I'm looking to build for me some comfort around having these conversations with my family, phone conversations or Zoom calls, so that when the time comes, now I've developed this habit, so that I can continue doing that.
I love that. Let's, as we, kind of wind down this episode, one of the pieces of resilience that you've been, really just a champion for, and I've heard you speak to it for yourself. You've coached me through it. You've been talking to some of our client partners about it too, is this idea of boundaries.
Hmm.
And how we navigate those right now when it is blurry
Right.
for some
Right.
folks. And even for folks that are in essential work and they're still going in to a physical work environment that's outside the home, that it looks and feels different around them, and how what they're coming in with is different. So tips and advice kind of around that. I think one of the ones I heard relative to helping people have a boundary at the end of the day, because one of the problems that has cropped up that, and this is where you've been championing it, is never stopping working, because it's already, well, I'm at home, and my laptop's right there, and I'll just answer the rest of the emails, or I'll work on that report, or, I'll do it while I've got, Hallmark Channel on in the background. I know you're a big fan of that.
That's my favorite.
And then all of a sudden, the days go from 8 to 10 to 12, 13 hours, and then emails are coming in all the time. That's impacting how we're working with coworkers. So one of the strategies I learned this week was the checkout call.
Yes.
At the end of the day. So having a 10, 15 minute all team Zoom or just phone conference call, check in. Do you need anything for tomorrow? How did the day go? Okay. And as a really great way to signal the workday is done. Because we don't have our coworkers walking by our desk at the end of the day. Not everybody does now. And so I liked that idea of a checkout call functionally, but I also like to apply that personally in terms of when one of the strategies folks are using a lot, especially with kids in the home and with two partners, if there's two adults in the home that are working, you kind of have to shift. And we're doing this here where I'm like, okay, I need, 10 a.m. until I walk out the door of the office to do this broadcast. And so my husband's got our daughter. And then after that, I know he's got a couple things that he needs to jump on. And I then need to go into mom mode and be really present there. So I like that concept of a checkout call, even just personally.
Yep.
Of like, okay, like a punching the clock, like, I used to work somewhere that had like the old machine that you would put the card in, punch it, make that really satisfying noise. And like mentally, I've started to do that when I walk out like my office door, of like, okay, quick pause. All right, switch mode. Now I'm here. That's been helpful for me.
Yeah. Boundaries are critically important. There's a couple things that I think about every time I say that word. As I think about there was the Netflix movie with Tina Fey, I think, and Amy Poehler, and they go on this girls trip, and they're really excited to be on this trip, and they go to the restaurant, and Brene Brown is sitting there with Brene Brown's friends, and they're like, oh my God, it's Brene Brown, and they go over and they talk to her, and like, what have you learned? What have you learned? And Brene Brown's like, I learned about boundaries. And they're like, got it. And so they walk away. But this idea of boundaries and keeping things in clear delineations helps our brains process things faster, because there is absolutely too much work to get done in a day. There is too much to get done. There are too many emails coming in. There are too many projects that are piling up. There's just too much to get done. And if we have this kind of open-ended, I'm going to go and I'm going to get the work done until the work is done, it's not going to get done. And actually, the reason I kind of started this crusade for boundaries is because I want people to take vacations. People don't take vacations, and I mean, just if you're watching this, have you thought about in this last period of time? Have you thought about putting in request for time off if you're still working? Like, yes, you're working from home. Have you thought about asking for a vacation? Maybe you got spring break coming up and you already had it in there, but think about that. If you're still working, you can still put in for vacation. Like, we can still ask for that space and that time. Just consider that. But the reason this matters so much is that there's a lot of research around our brain's ability to process like difficult cognitive loads, so difficult thoughts, difficult processes after a break. And when we don't allow ourselves that break, even from just saying, I'm done with this broadcast and now I'm going to be a dad for the next 15 minutes, like that break actually makes it clear in our brains, okay, whew, I'm not working for the next 15 minutes. And now let me go do this. And then whenever I come back to work, I'm actually going to be better able to do the work. If I don't give myself that delineation, that boundary around it, then I say, okay, I'm done with the broadcast now. Okay, kids, what did you want to do? And wait, hold, did I finish that thing that I was supposed to be doing? Okay, no. Everyone should shut up. Just shut up. I'm thinking about something, right? And so I would never talk to my kids like that, you know.
I was gonna say I've never heard you even remotely use that phrase, but I'm not around you all the time.
In fact, awesome. Actually, whenever mommy or daddy says shut up, the kid's like, oh,
it's probably a good boundary to have.
That's a boundary, yeah. But this idea of kind of creating these boundaries, even micro boundaries, it makes it easier for us to process the actual things that are going on. And the end of the day boundary, the beginning of the day boundary, you know, even just cleaning, like so for me, you know, shaving. It sounds strange, but just doing that just makes a different kind of boundary. I'm not advocating for everyone to go shave, but just understand there's different ways to have boundaries that are not just time.
Don't worry, I'm not right now.
But as we continue this idea of adversity, and if any indication is, you know, I was looking at some data a couple days ago that the peak for coronavirus in Arizona is probably coming, you know, in a couple of weeks. At least the models predict that or project that. You know, some states have already seen their peak, like California, possibly Washington. That's wonderful news, but that still means that if that's the peak, then we're about halfway. so considering we're going to be going through this for the next couple of months, and for many people, just the reality of the length of time of this disruption, just understanding this, like, whoa, I was okay for like 2-3 weeks, but 2-3 months, that's a whole different ballgame. So as that starts to play out, we're going to be under more and more adversity and processing things in different ways. And so the more of these tools that we can use as far as reframing, oh, this is an opportunity, ooh, and then acknowledging it's difficult, are different ways that we can continue to build connections with one another. And I think, you know, the last thing that I want to talk about as far as resilience is you know, there's a lot of research around, you know, and I talk about a lot, adverse childhood experiences, you know, so essentially I'm not gonna go into it, but there's a lot of things that can happen to you as a child that will, data shows will prove a correlated effect to adverse physical ailments in adulthood. So, you know, diabetes, heart disease, drug abuse, all these other things. So things that happen as a child can predict or reasonably predict these adverse experiences as adults. But they found that there's a couple of things that can completely wipe that out. And one of them is resilience. And so they started doing this research on resilience for adverse childhood experience. And they found that one single connection, one single meaningful, positive connection, usually with an adult at that time, can completely wipe out those adverse effects in the future. And so as we talk about, you know, our coffee and connection, even though I don't drink coffee, you never know what's in the cup. That's
okay. I'm drinking up for both of us.
As we talk about, I couldn't see it.
I'm almost done.
Look at you.
I'm trying not to pour it on my keyboard.
I'm almost done too. Still don't know what's in there though. But as we talk about, you know, how do we build resilience? Well, keep connecting.
Yeah.
Keep connecting. You know, Nicole, my best friend for 20 years, like what would this look like if we didn't have the opportunity to, you know, obviously we're doing this, you know, on a show, but we're connecting every day and checking in with each other every day. And that matters, you know, whether you're doing it with your whole team or just one person, it matters. And one thing that I've found is that you never know how much is going to matter to the person it matters to. Like you gave me a check-in on Monday, you know, so, you know, hey, how are you doing? I'm like, actually, and so, you know, I shared it with you, and it's like I felt good, you know, to share. And so, you know, keep finding ways to connect with one another, because that's how we're going to make it through it together.
Yep. I love the boundary in the morning.
Hmm.
I love that, of
Yeah.
setting a start time, or packaging that differently. And your comment about, or your discussion around vacations,
Hmm.
when you said that, I was like, I can't take vacation right now. I can't, and I'm thinking, other people might have heard that and felt the same way. I think number one, challenge yourself on that assumption.
Right. Right.
Is that valid? Because I honestly haven't even thought about doing that here.
Hmm.
And holy cow, that might be really fun to just, like, let's set that for a couple days.
Yeah.
You cannot do that, for structural reasons, financial reasons, fear reasons,
Hmm.
personal comfort, whatever. Take a micro vacation.
Right.
Eric knows, like, micro strategies are like my favorite
Yeah.
things ever. But take a micro vacation, not even a mini vacation, which is like a half day or a couple hours. I'm talking like 15 minutes,
Hmm.
and put an ocean soundscape on your computer, look at pictures of a past vacation, whatever it is, but put a boundary around that, and understand it's not fluffy. That's hard skill related self-investment to help you show up differently, like Eric is right now. Thank you. I hope you're going to enjoy your moment of micro vacation after this. So
It's so wonderful.
I think for everybody, continue to understand your own capacity, check in with those around you, deploy strategies to help you do that, and to build that personal and that team resilience, whether that's at home or in your work environment team. Eric and I are here for you. If there's any support, coaching, training that we can offer you, that's what we do. We're here
Or
to
just a
serve
phone
those who
call
serve.
too. Yeah. Just
Just a check-in.
yeah.
Yep, absolutely. We'd love to hear from you. So, all right, with that, keep on
Keep
sipping.
connecting. Wait.
Keep connecting. Sip strongly. Resilient. Practice resilient sipping.
Resip.
Resentment? No, that sounds like resentment.
Bye.